Hello, it is I, the Mr. Modesen, and welcome back to Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Today, I will be showing you where to get every single piece of intel in all of the missions in Black Ops 2. So why keep messing around? Let's get right into it. Now, before we continue on with this intel video, I will have to give credit to IGN, as their website is going to lead me to where all these intel are, so that I can tell you where to find them. So yeah, thank you IGN, and now let's get right into the video. The first intel you can find is by this area where you can find the mortars. In the little crater, you can find the intel box. After picking that up, you have your intel, and now we can move on to the next one. The next piece of intel happens when you're on the barge. You can walk behind this heavy machine gun and grab the next intel box. Now, let's move on to the next one. The third piece of intel... Shut up. The third piece of intel... nearby this ammo pickup, you may mix it up with this, but that's not the one you're going for. The intel you want to look for is in this watchtower. After you climb up it, you'll find the box, and boom, that's all your intel. And now, your career record will be updated, and you will have your little challenge complete. So now, let's move on to Celerium. Oh yeah, by the way, before I tell you anything more, I just realized while running away, do not quit the mission after finding all 3 intels. You have to finish the mission for it to actually update your challenge record and all that, so yeah, keep that in mind. Alright, the first piece of intel you will find on the mission Celerium is after either you or Salazar destroy the helicopter, you can run over and find an open area with a little place. You can find a lot of weird stuff, but of course, your intel and desk right there. So, let's go on to the next piece of intel. After you are attacked by the 2 ASDs after infiltrating the main base, you'll be able to walk over to this little office area and acquire intel right there. It should be on the desk there. I was able to grab it through the monitor, but yeah, move on to the next piece of intel now. The next piece of intel you can find is after you find the magnetometrist and you get raided by the last little bit of enemies. When you walk in the room with... Go away, Harper. After they blow open this door, you can walk through it, get over here, and acquire the last piece of intel. Now, let's move on to Old Wounds. The first piece of intel you can find on Old Wounds is after you're done meeting up with the rebel leader and, you know, do all that stuff. You can find it right here, to the left of where you leave. Right there. So, let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Just tell him he better come through with his intel on the net desk.
The next piece of intel you can find is at this little thingy right there. Base is over there, one pillar there. The next spiky pillar, you'll find your intel here. There'll be a red flag and an ammo cache. So let's move on to the next one, shall we? The next ammo cache you can find is on Death Valley. Go away. Or Death Valley, yeah, whatever the fuck. This part, where you are defending the ammo cache. You can run to this cave. Was this cave? Wait, hold on. Alright, I suppose I forgot that I already picked it up, but right there you can find another intel point, and that'll be your third one, and that should be every piece of intel for this mission. So, let's move on to Time and Fate. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Time and Fate is when you're in rage mode and you make it to the stable. At the very end of the stable, you'll find this cart, and right here you'll find your first piece of intel. Let's move on to the next piece. The next piece of intel you can find on this mission should be right about here. I already grabbed it a little while back, but yeah, it should be right there. You can grab it, and now let's move on to the next one. The next piece of intel you can find is right here, the CIA memo.
CIA?
This is both part of the story and a piece of intel, so after you grab that, you should have all the intel you need for this mission, and now we can move on to the next mission, Fallen Angel. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Fallen Angel is right here, right in the spawn room, just on one of these produce shelves. Now, let's go on to the next piece. The next piece of intel you can find is after you get through this fence with the bus almost crushing you, the second you move up, you can go right to this area with a red light. You can find your piece of intel right here on this trash pile. But even if you already have that piece of intel, it's still very good as you can find this ammo cache. Now, let's move on to the final piece of intel on the mission Fallen Angel. The final piece of intel you can find on the mission Fallen Angel is after you're done the stealth section.
Found the building at the end of the street. You ready?
The last piece of intel. Oh my god! The final piece of intel is after you've done the stealth point, you can go.
Fuck it. Gotta go.
It's right there. Yeah, right there. You find that tablet, and you can finally finish the mission and grab your intel. Now, I'm gonna go die so I don't have to do this again. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Karma is after you're done killing all the Cuban PMCs and you make it to the room where you can search for face IDs. Once you get from there, walk down into this desk, where some windows have shattered, you can find your tablet. Right there. Also, unrelated, but you can also just pick up Ziggy, and it'll give you more career record. Anyway, let's move on to the next piece of intel, shall we? The next piece of intel you can find on the mission Karma is after the bomb explodes at the nightclub and you make it to the mall part.
Shit, man, he's getting away.
After you get to the mall part of the mission, go downstairs and go to the shop named Deho, and go behind the main shop counter and get the intel. Let's move on to the last piece of intel now. Okay, right here, right before the stairs leading up to DeFalco, you can go to this sales kiosk thingy, and your intel will be right here. So let's move on to the final. Let's move on to the next mission, shall we? The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Suffer With Me is this intel box. After you assist the golf team in the hangar, you can run through this part. Right before you head downstairs to help Mason, right there you'll find your intel box. Let's move on to the next piece of intel now, yeah? The next piece of intel you can find is when you're about here at the church, in the slums, there will be a house with a breached wall. Go inside, and you should find an ammo cache and your piece of intel right here on that counter. So, let's move on to the final piece of intel, yeah? The final piece of intel. The final piece of intel The final piece of intel you can find on the mission Suffer With Me is right after the mission loading happens. You can walk in here, and there should be a piece of intel right on that sink. It should be like right after the mission, this part of the mission starts. So, move on to Achilles Veil. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Achilles Veil is when you're about to get this camo suit with the access, there's one room before it. Right here, you'll find your intel tablet right there on the floor next to the two carpets. So let's move on to the second piece of intel, shall we? The second piece of intel you can find on the mission Achilles Veil is after you either shoot Harper or Menendez shoots you, when you're in the kill zone street, go to the left room, run in here, behind these containers, you'll find your piece of intel right there behind these ammo crates. So let's move on to the final piece of intel on Achilles Veil. Right here, you can run down to the right of this house, and you'll find a ladder you can get up on. After you get up on this ladder, there should be a satellite on the roof, as well as one rebel. This rebel, obviously isn't going to be very difficult to kill. Oh. They're not rebels, but right here, next to the satellite dish on this fuel tank, you can find the final piece of intel on the mission Achilles Veil. Now, let's move on to Odysseus. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Odysseus is after the server room crash, wherever the hell, and you're meant to isolate the turrets. Right here at the very end, you can find your first piece of intel on the mission Odysseus. Let's move on to the second piece, shall we? The second piece of intel you can find in the mission Odysseus is after the little showdown with Briggs and Salazar. When right before the hangar, you can find this little stair place with the American flag. Go up it, and on this little desk, you can find the second piece of intel. Now, let's move on to the final piece of intel on the mission Odysseus. The final piece of intel you can find on the mission Odysseus is after you get to the main fleet deck. After you get past here, that's where you can get to the claws. Once you get down here, there will be two VTOLs still standing. You may think it's here, but no. The intel you want to find is on the right side of VTOL. Should be right on the passenger accommodation. Grab that, and that'll be all the intel you need for the mission Odysseus. Now, let's move on to Cordis Die. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Cordis Die is after the little sniping thingy. Excuse me, there's a guy shooting me. After that, you can run down here with the police bike and this transit bus. Right around here, around the thing, you will find your piece of intel. Now, let's move on to the second piece of intel, shall we? The next piece of intel you can find on the mission Cordis Die is right here. I already grabbed it a little while back in my first playthrough of this game. Right there, you'll find it. Now, let's move on to the third piece of intel, and yeah. The final piece of intel you can find on the mission Cordis Die is when you're in the mall, go up the stairs and you'll find Wes's favorite t-shirts. Right here, you'll find your final piece of intel, and that should be all you need for Cordis Die. Now, let's move on to the final mission, Judgment Day. The first piece of intel you can find on the mission Judgment Day is after you get past that little fight with the claws, right here in Building 27, as a lot of the buildings have numbers on them. Building 27 will likely have your piece of intel right on one of the counters. I don't know which one because I just got here, but if I had to guess, it would be upstairs. Yeah, right there. Final desk to the right, on the second floor, on Building 27, you'll find your first piece of intel. Let's move on to the second piece, yeah? Alright, the second piece of intel you can find on the mission, Judgment Day, is after you're done killing everyone in the broadcast room. This is assuming you're at the top of the stairs. Walk down to the right, and once you are down 2 desks, there should be your piece of intel underneath a guy's monitor. Now, let's move on to the final piece of intel in Judgment Day. As you're trying to stop Menendez from escaping, you make it to this room with 4 pillars that have light blue fluid flowing through them. Follow my path. Go forward, then left, then go past these stairs and go down the stairs. Once you make it here, go behind here, run around, and by this container, you'll find your piece of intel in this box. That is now every piece of intel in Call of Duty Black Ops 2. I hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye. Have a good one.